question. So first of all, we are not going to let Florida become San Francisco, where homeless are everywhere. We're not going to let that happen. And honestly, if you look in LA, some of these places, that is not compassionate. That is false compassion to say that people can sleep everywhere, harass people coming by, use drugs, open-air drug markets, and all this stuff. That is a society in decline when that becomes the norm. So we're going to be very clear. Now, look, we don't have the same problems at those levels, but especially when you have municipalities where you may have leadership that has a different philosophical bent that I think most Floridians would have on this, there's a danger that there could be something that could explode in one of our cities in Florida. So I think what the bill's trying to do, and I support this, is limit local governments from allowing this sleeping in public. You don't want the homeless intruding on quality of life, on public safety, and on businesses and the economy. And so that has got to be the firm line that you have. Now, I think most people agree with that. What courts have said, and I'm not sure that this is the proper interpretation of the Constitution, but I think this started, during the Warren Court, where they just kind of made it up as they went along, so why not, right? But I think what they said is if you ban sleeping in public on the streets and on the sidewalks, that was unconstitutional unless there was some place to go. So and I think Orlando had something that got approved by the 11th Circuit because they had a shelter where there was still space available. So the court said, well, no, you can remove them off the street if there's shelter. So I think what the bill's trying to do is say hard and fast rule. No encampments, none of this stuff in public. The average citizen should never be intruded upon because of homeless. And then you did. But then what do you have to do to make sure it survives judicial scrutiny? You got to have sheltering ability. And then if they want to set up some of these sites, it can't just be some site that is like Sodom and Gomorrah, where they're using drugs and doing all this stuff. It needs to be a situation where help is available. So would I be willing to help with things like mental health? I would be willing to do that from the state level. Because if you look at some of the homeless, it's not just, they need an apartment. You can take some of these people in San Francisco, put them in an apartment, and that doesn't solve the problem, because the homelessness is a symptom of the underlying mental illness that they're suffering from. It's not the cause. So yes, I'd be willing to help with that at the state level. I think that's important. I don't think it would be something that most communities would need. I think there'd probably be a handful where we would want to make sure that this thing doesn't go sideways, because I can tell you, you guys probably know, you have people that have moved to Florida in large numbers. We've always attracted people, but particularly over the last 3 or 4 years, you've had people, yes, they were fleeing some of the COVID mandates, yes, some of the taxes, but the public safety has been a huge issue. And yes, part of it is you have these prosecutors who wouldn't prosecute. You have police that weren't supported in these areas and weren't able to do their job. But this homelessness and drug use really has hurt the quality of life for people in some of these once very proud and vibrant American cities. So I think that legislation is saying we're not going to let that happen in Florida, and we're willing to take whatever remedial that we have to do to make sure it passes judicial scrutiny going forward. But ultimately, I think the mental health component of this is really, really good. And so the question is, like a San Francisco, their view is they want to facilitate more of this. And of course, you're getting more of it. I think ours, we want to discourage this, and we want people to get on their feet. But at a minimum, we cannot have a family feel unsafe just walking down the street of some place in Orlando or Miami Beach or wherever, because there's a massive homeless encampment that's intruded on day-to-day life.
Yeah, it looks like we got a little problem here in Fort Lauderdale. Gee whiz, look at this. Yeah. Saturday night. Yeah, you got a little problem here in Fort Lauderdale. People sleeping on there. Probably still in the park too. It's not as bad as San Francisco, but
here in Fort Lauderdale, they had not long back, they had in front of the library a tent city homeless encampment. Okay. This was an open air drug market. All right. people, and it would spill out into the streets. You'd have people just wandering in the middle of the road all around there. It's still kind of bad down there, but they got rid of it finally. But and they're just doing drugs. They're doing drugs and drinking alcohol, and I went down there a few times and, to feed them and give them clothes and to with ministries, and they're either mentally ill or they're just drinking or they're taking drugs and just living in squalor. And DeSantis said that. He's like, it can't be like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's like Amsterdam, if you've seen season 3 of The Wire, where it's like the open air drug market there. But at least in The Wire, they pushed them all into areas where people didn't live. In Fort Lauderdale here, you had the tent city right in front of the damn library. And you still have people that camp out around the library. Their carcasses are all strewn along there as you're walking by, going out. That's not something that people need to see. They don't need to be homeless. Can't take over parks. And let me tell you, you've got Faith Farm, you've got Calvary House, you got the Salvation Army, and those are the Christian places. But DeSantis is now talking about government places, but there's I think First Step, there's ACT, there's a lot of different places you can go. But the thing is when you go to those places, you can't be on drugs and alcohol. And a lot of the people that are out there, that's not acceptable for them. And in the case of Calvary House, Salvation Army, and Faith Farm, you have to work. Like, you're not just going to lay around all day. Like, you have to actually get up and contribute something to humanity. All right. And if you're unable to, if you're a little bit crippled or something, then you can work up in the jewelry shop or something. They don't make you go do heavy lifting or something if you're unable to, but you have to work. And most of the people that are out there they're not willing to do that. And a lot of people that are homeless, they do have a place where they can stay. It's transient. Like, you think of homeless people as being they're always homeless, that you just label somebody on their forehead homeless, and they're homeless forever. That's not how it is. A lot of time they're staying with their girl for a little while, then they get kicked out because of drugs or alcohol or whatever. Or they're staying with mom for a while. It's a transient thing. And there's people that are homeless and they're maybe not permanently homeless. They just got kicked out. And there's some that like it. People think that every homeless person doesn't want to be homeless. That's not the case. A lot of them are getting disability checks. Did you know that? A lot of them. And one of the things, I'll tell you, they enable these people. They one of the things that they do, all right, bye, babe. One of the things that they do is the first thing when they get them into some of these government places is fix them up with a disability check, because that's how that's what pays for their stay. So that it makes sense for the shelter we got to get them on disability because that's going to cover. So, but that's just, I call it disability enabling people, because just handing people free money is not a good idea. All right. Especially people that have bad habits like drugs and alcohol, and then handing them free money with no accountability, like DeSantis said, and letting them just live in squalor on the streets, spend that check until it runs out, then go out and panhandle and harass people on the intersection and in front of Publix. That's not being compassionate, and that's enabling them. And then they end up dead. Where was the compassion in that? So, I think DeSantis has it right with this, that there's a mixture of outreach, making sure there's a place for them to go, and providing state funding for that. I think that's an important place for state funding to go. Of course, God is what people need in their lives. But then the mental illness part, there are people that are genuinely mentally ill. A lot of mental illness is caused by drug and alcohol use or exacerbated by it. Okay. But there are people that are actually mentally ill, like without drugs or alcohol. Something happened to them that damaged them, or they were born with a predisposition and they just have that. And some of them need the help of medication. Not everybody needs medication. I would say, and I worked in the psych unit before, I would say about out of all the people that are medicated in America for psychological things, probably only 3% of those people actually need medication. That's what I think. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but like this from observing, I think that people are over medicated, and they're medicated for the wrong reasons. And then And then a lot of times I think medication is a temporary thing. It's not something that they should be on all the time. But there are people out there that genuinely do have mental disorders that have nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. And they need to be taken care of as well. But in the meantime, you can't have people just strewing all over the place. You can't all over the sidewalks and then have in Broward, we have this judge, we have a woke judge here and a woke prosecutor. And when they bring in the, yeah, Anthony, she probably does. When they bring in people off the street, that judge just puts them back out. And then you've got these, there was something where they were like saying, oh, well, people begging, they need that for life sustenance. And it was interesting because the same people that are claiming that harassing people on the corner and panhandling in front of Publix and stuff, that is needed for sustenance. Those same people were telling us that we couldn't go to work because of germs in 2021. So wasn't that for sustenance? You didn't care about my sustenance or the sustenance of the people that wanted to go out and work for a living. But it was like, oh, but you can beg and harass people on a street corner. No. So that can't be tolerated at all, because it's basically like an injection. If you allow it to start in an area where like people can just sleep all over the place and lay there passed out with their liquor bottle and because if you look at the people that are sleeping all in the parks and stuff, you're gonna find a liquor bottle around. All right, you're just going to. They're drinking, okay, and that can't be allowed. I mean, what can, like, if one, because say for instance, I just decided I was going to go off the edge and start drinking and doing drugs, and my wife kicked me out, and so then I can just go down to a public park and just lay there in my own piss in the middle of the park where people are walking by and walking their dogs and stuff. No, that's not fair. I got to get my act together, right? So, the focus should be on getting and helping people get their act together. And sometimes a lot of that tough love is involved in that. It's not just, oh, well, let's coddle them and stuff, because that's what the system does. The system coddles people, and that's not helpful, and tries to hook them up with free money and all this other stuff. They end up right back on the street doing what they've always been doing. So anyway, this is Chris Nelson. Please like and share and follow this channel and set it up so you get notifications. If DeSantis has a press conference tomorrow, I'll be streaming that as well. Thanks for watching.